Hello, Andy Miller here from Calvary Church in Claremorris. Today we're looking at the Christmas story in Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly, and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. The night Jesus was born, God sent angels to announce his birth to shepherds living out in the hills outside of Bethlehem. Their visit was loud and dramatic. Hundreds and thousands of angels in the sky glorifying and praising God. But God also sent a message to some astrologers living in the east, not with thousands of angels in the sky, but with a single silent star. I think these men were the sort of people that Daniel met when he was in Babylon. Daniel chapter 2 and verse 1 talks about magicians, enchanters, sorcerers and astrologers. These men weren't much good to the Babylonian kings whenever they needed them, but this time they got something right, because God revealed to them that this new star in the sky meant that a new king had been born in Jerusalem. And so they decided that they must go and find him and worship him. They collected expensive gifts, fit for a king, and they set out on a journey that probably took several months. And they went straight to King Herod in Jerusalem, and they said, "Where is the new king that has been born? We saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him." Well, Herod and his leaders were all shocked, because they didn't know anything about this new king that had been born. They hadn't heard about how angels appeared to Zachariah and Mary and Joseph to announce the new king. They hadn't heard how angels appeared to shepherds living out in the hills outside of Bethlehem. No one had told them what Simeon and Anna said when Jesus was presented in the temple. No one had paid any attention to these things. And by now Jesus was probably over a year old and life was continuing as normal. But Herod was worried. He didn't want a new king. And he realized that this new king was probably God's king, the Messiah. And he called the religious leaders together and asked where the Messiah was to be born. And they immediately told him Bethlehem, because that's what the prophet Micah had said. And so these wise men went straight to Bethlehem, led by the star, and they found Jesus. They expected to find Jesus in a palace, but instead he was in a humble house. They went in and met Mary, his mother, and the baby Jesus. They bowed down and worshipped him, and presented him with the expensive gifts that they had brought. Despite the humble circumstances, they knew for sure that this child was the new king that they had come to see. And they were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, So they returned back to their country quietly by another route. Again, we see in this story God's miraculous hand on the events surrounding the birth of his son. He sent a sign to foreign astrologers, to men who did not know him or worship him, because he wanted them to come and see this new king that had been born. And they travelled far to find Jesus, searched until they found him. They bowed down, worshipped him, and presented him with expensive gifts. Well, this Christmas, God doesn't want you to bring expensive gifts, but he does want you to bring yourself and to bow down and to worship his son, Jesus. Thanks for listening, and let me wish you all a very happy Christmas.